Good morning, Year 7. Welcome back to another lesson on the village project. I hope you've all got over the news about the runway, but we'll come back to what we're going to do that in just a moment. Before that, I've got rather a slightly more extended do now for you. Probably take you, I would guess, 10 minutes, but and I'd love to see these as well. Here's a quote from The Wind in the Willows. Animals arrived, liked the look of the place, took up their quarters, settled down, spread and flourished. They didn't bother themselves about the past, they never do. They're too busy. The wildwood is pretty well populated by now, with all the usual lot, good, bad and indifferent. I name no names. It takes all sorts to make a world. That's Ratty talking there to Mole, I believe. He's talking about how there's some things in there about tolerance, and I want to see if we can pick them out, which is perhaps one of the lesser themes, but it's definitely in there, the theme of tolerance. Anyway, so I want you to write a peel paragraph that shows how this quotation supports the idea of tolerance. So your point is going to be this paragraph shows that Ratty is a tolerant animal. Your evidence would be whatever evidence it is you want to take from that quote. Your analysis would be simply explaining how the quote that you've selected supports your point that Ratty is showing tolerance there, and your link, I would just link it back to the question. So have a go at that, and I'll give you 10 minutes to do that and then go on to the next slide. Onward now to ways in which we might be able to save the village, and there is absolutely no guarantee that we can. Roseham is in a lot of trouble here, so we need to get our heads together. Well, we can't get them together, obviously. We need to think very hard about how it is that we can save the village, and we're going to do a little protest at some point. But first of all, let's just go through the rest of today's lesson. Okay, what do you think, from your point of view, in your character's point of view, that is the most convincing argument that would stop the government going ahead with their plans? Now, if we were in a classroom, we would have a village meeting kind of in character. You would all play your characters and we'd have a meeting. You know, I don't know, the policeman might say, well, it's a very good place to bring up children. You know, there's all kinds of reasons. It's got a long history. It's a beautiful place. But we need to come up with something very convincing. So I wish I was having this discussion with you, but nevertheless, I want you to think. Maybe talk to your parents, brothers, sisters, whatever, or your friends. Perhaps you're talking to each other through the internet or whatever. But you know, come up with convincing ideas as to why the village should be saved. I think we need to probably emphasise the historical side of things. You can't just say because you know, we've got a nice pub. We need to say that tourists come and it adds to the culture of the country and so on. So think of a convincing argument that would stop the government going ahead with their plans, and then write a very brief Daft Forest paragraph, a persuasive paragraph explaining why it shouldn't happen. You don't need to use all of De Forest. For example, I can't see how you'd use an anecdote in this. You probably won't have been in a village that's being destroyed before, so it will be quite difficult. Just pick 3 elements of De Forest to write that paragraph. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. Well done, because whatever you came up with there, it did the trick. Boris Johnson has granted the mayor of the town a unique opportunity. If you can produce a superb presentation to explain why the airport should not build on our village, then he will look into other locations. Obviously, this has to be very convincing. Now, here are the things that you need to do to create a good presentation. You need to know about your topic, which is the village, and obviously all the you know, cast aside the complaint letter and all the rest of it. Now we're looking for all the positive things about the village that you could talk about that shouldn't be lost underneath a horrible tarmac runway. Know your goal, which is obviously to preserve the village in some way. Understand your audience. You are talking to a select committee from Parliament. So you need to be passionate, but at the same time you need to take into account that this is a formal environment. You need to be speaking formally. So think about your letter of complaint, not the thing that you complained about, but how it is that the type of language that you use. You need to include persuasive devices from De Forest, and you need to outline your main points. So when you actually come to writing it, you need to write a strong opening, you know, something perhaps slightly emotional. What I mean by that is not like way over the top, but something about maybe think about how the children are going to be uprooted in the middle of their education, separated from all of their friends. You know, that would be you can be emotional and forceful without being sort of over the top, because as soon as you do that, you lose any argument. Offer persuasive evidence. Don't forget the counter argument, then undermine it. And what that means is they won't be saying anything because you'll be presenting, but you might say you would say to them, well, you might think that the UK needs this new runway because it'll bring lots of tourists to the country, and some people might agree with you on that. However, I would argue that every time you build over a village of historic value like this, you lessen our power as a tourist destination. All right, and then conclude with a call to action. We must, you must allow our village to survive. It is part of old England, a part of culture that is disappearing. Something along those lines. Now here is a planning grid for you, which I would like you to use. Pretty self-explanatory there. I don't think I need to go through that. I've just been through it on the other slide. So there we are. Have a look at that, and then we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, now what is our key message? What have you come up with? Obviously, this is all individual this year because we're all individually placed. That doesn't make it any less powerful. So, what is your key message? What was the central part of your speech that you hoped would persuade them not to build on our village? And then try and think about a slogan, and we'll be using those slogans tomorrow. So there you are, Year 7. I hope you enjoy this lesson. All still to play for. We might still be able to save Roseham. I certainly hope so. It's a lovely village. I was planning on retiring there, frankly. So it would be nice if we could, save it. So good luck with that, and I will speak to you tomorrow.